Welcome to Leadership Rewired. Our mission is to disrupt traditional leadership development by fostering a community of resilient, growth-minded individuals who drive their own destinies and lead effectively through change without sacrificing their well-being. Two former colleagues and current friends, Allison Allen and Dean Martin, invite you to join them for an honest conversation that brings a personal perspective to the issues of leadership.
Hi.
Hello, everybody. This is a special episode of Leadership Rewired because Allison and I are together in person.
Together at Dean's.
Yes, yeah, in Bushwick in Brooklyn. Just for a special conversation. Welcome to Leadership Rewired. Today we are talking about how to be a great leader, even when you may not have a great leader yourself, or how can you be the kind of manager you wish you had?
When that lead by example, you shouldn't follow the example.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Otherwise.
Yeah. So to get us started, let's even think about, how else might we have even thought about this conversation as what does it feel like if you say, I think I've got a bad boss, or I just really am struggling with my manager.
Yep.
What we want to be careful about here, Allison, is that this isn't really the podcast if what you're experiencing really requires escalation to HR.
100%.
Where you're being actively discriminated against, there's some kind of harassment, physical or emotional abuse. This isn't that kind of bad boss. Those are clearly bad bosses that need to be dealt with in different ways. This is just hey, I've got a manager and she freaking drives me crazy. Or I've got a manager and he really leaves me out of the loop and it's so hard to work with him. I'm trying to get good stuff done, but damn, this is tough.
This is tough.
Yeah. So what are some other things that you would say kind of make that difficult? What are other bad bosses or?
Well, I think if we pick up on the things that we've talked about in our self-love talk, and we talked a little bit about, emotional intelligence and things like that, I think you have to just think about, again, what is it about this context that's not sitting well with you? What is it about this relationship that doesn't engage you, doesn't get you excited, doesn't pull your best behavior and best work out? And that context, I think, a good example, and I can think about a couple of these in myself, but, for example, a couple of jobs ago, I had a leader whose his style would be that he would lose his temperature, like temper, not his temperature, but his temper in probably the first 5 minutes of a 101 or a group meeting or even the town hall. He's like lost his shit and he would yell. And that was his way of sort of getting people to mobilize and get work done. It was often through fear and yelling and, me being the kind of person I am, I often bumped heads with this leader because I don't think yelling is necessary, but it didn't do anything for me. It didn't do anything for the room. And there was a lot of intimidation. So when you think about bad bosses, you have to figure out what is it about this sort of relationship that isn't sitting well with me, that doesn't, get me motivated, that actually causes fear or concern amongst people, either on your team who report directly to you, who don't necessarily want to work for that person. So, and you're trying to be the best boss you can because you just want to be, or whatever the reasons are, but you're just not getting what you need from that leader. Yeah.
As we, our podcast is really for leaders. So that's why we're calling this How to Be a Great Leader, even when you don't have a great one. So what you've shared is, what does it feel like subjectively to be with a manager like that who's shouting, or maybe a number of other sort of examples of bad behavior? I also want to bring in and therefore the impact on me and my team is this.
Yes.
So of course, if you've got a leader who's constantly undermining you inadvertently, they may not be a bad human being, but they're doing that. Or
don't provide vision, don't give you direction.
Not developing you.
Not developing you, no investment, no feedback. And if it is, it's not necessarily feedback that you can resonate with.
Or micromanaging. We looked at that last week. Or maybe a manager who's just very hard to get hold of. And you're like, I wish I wish I could speak to my manager.
Yeah.
They're just absent somewhere. Any kind of, there's no right definition of what does it feel like to have a bad boss. If you're sitting there going, geez, I just spend a lot of time trying to not lose my own mind because of some stuff that my manager's doing, then this is really for you, because we know that then is taking your time and attention away from you being an amazing manager.
Exactly. And I think something that just occurred to me is that sometimes I was using this sort of yelling example. Sometimes bosses are bosses who are checked out. They don't provide you with any direction. They don't necessarily tell you what you should be focusing on. You feel like you're almost making it up.
Yeah.
And even if you're inquiring about what are the priorities, and they just aren't giving you what you need. Yeah. So bad isn't always theatrical or loud. No. Bad sometimes is they're just not doing what they should be doing.
Yeah.
And they're not focused on the right things, and you're not necessarily getting the direction that you need.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So to go very binary on something, our choices are therefore, I've got this relationship with this person.
Mm-hmm.
Do I stick it out? Do I stay? Or do I start looking for another job? Basically, should I stay or should I go?
Mm-hmm.
I'd love us to look at that first piece. So if I decide, okay, I can work this out. I want to stay. I don't want to get too dramatic. Yes, he is absent. I'll just have to deal with it. What are some good ways in which we can, not let that impact on our well-being, not let whatever that manager's doing affect your ability to drive change, to be resilient, whatever? How do we stay in a good headspace?
Well, I mean, I think there's I would say, and I think I don't know if you were asking that to just sort of as an open question, but I would almost put managers in compartments.
Okay.
So let's use a manager who doesn't give vision, who doesn't give direction, who doesn't give you guidance. You think for the most part they've checked out. Let's almost put that manager here.
Okay.
Then you've got some managers that are, what I would call a slick manager. They get you to do all the work, and then they take your work into presentations. They delegate, which we're going to talk about at some point, to you, but you don't get any sort of credit for that. They take all the credit. They, in essence, you don't even hear what happened.
Right.
All of a sudden, the senior most manager is coming to you talking about how great the work is, or talking to the team about how great the work is, and you're like, I did all that.
No one said anything.
Yeah. So let's put that in a category. And then the last category, and I'm not saying these are all exhaustive or the only categories. The one is that first example I gave: yeller, intimidator, somebody who's just not necessarily setting the right example. In the first two examples, I actually think that, and again, that's the one where no direction, and the other one where they're taking credit. In the first example, I would say, I think you can ask open-ended, thoughtful questions, right? To try to get to an answer for yourself and for your team.
Yeah.
So something like, if I was focusing on anything right now, I think I'm supposed to be focusing on A, B, and C. If I was focusing on any of those three options, what would be the most important one that you would want me to focus on?
Right.
Almost drawing them into the conversation. I'm noticing that you're not necessarily giving me a lot of direction on this. Is that because the project is no longer a priority, or is that because I should be doing something else? Can you just help me figure out exactly what I need to get myself and the team focused on?
Yeah.
Another one could be, you seem like you're focused on a whole bunch of other things.
Yeah.
Would it be easier if I worked with John? John could be his boss, or Sue, that could be his peer. Hi, I noticed that the team reporting to Sue is really, really busy. Is there an opportunity for myself and my team to help Sue out while you figure out what our next strategy is? So you can leave everything away from this sort of blaming and more around almost offering an answer to the boss, and then basically have the boss choose. I think if you have nothing that comes out of those four questions, then I think it's almost like you have to figure out a way to escalate. And I would escalate in the way I said I was going to this person's manager. I would say, look, I'm really trying to get some clarity on priorities. It feels like John is really, really super busy. Is there any way in place in which my team and I, and I can add more value?
Yeah.
And that may say, well, goodness, what do you mean? Like you don't have enough work to do? And it's like, no, we have some good work, but we have some options, and I just want to be able to help other team members out.
Yeah.
So I do think, that doesn't feel like one of those situations where it needs to get super contentious.
Yeah.
But if you're doing nothing and not asking any questions for any kind of direction to your manager or their manager, then you're kind of just sort of sitting and waiting, and that's never good.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I would say. For the second manager, and this is again just my point of view, and I'd love to hear yours, where basically people are taking credit for your work, what you and your team are doing, and not sharing the load at all. That to me would be direct feedback. Right. And I would just be like, look, I really, my team was super jazzed about that project. They were excited about doing that work. I want to keep them pumped up. As you know, most of them are top performers and we don't want to lose them. When you made that presentation and you didn't acknowledge, what we did, the team felt deflated.
Yeah.
And so can we work something out where at least you can give a shout out to the team? You don't have to give a shout out to me, but if you can give a shout out to the team, I would certainly appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we don't want to lose top talent. When you bring things to top talent and high performers, most leaders perk up on something like that. Because the last thing they want is a whole team walking out.
Correct.
Right? And all you need to do is pay a nod to the team that's working hard. They report to you. So why wouldn't you share that?
Yeah.
So I would give that feedback directly. Yeah. Like, this is what happened. Like, we did this. You took credit. You didn't acknowledge the team.
Yeah.
This is what the impact of that is.
Right. Yeah.
The last one, before I go to the last one, like, what are your thoughts about the first and second example? And again, these aren't exhaustive examples.
No,
if you have others, I don't want to take away.
I think what I hear from you is really positive in that our first choice is to lead.
Yes.
So to actually even see this less than ideal manager as part of your leadership challenge.
Yes. Yes.
And not frame it in that shitty way for them.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you're a real problem. How do I do this? But okay, in my mind, I do have somebody who's super controlling, or I do have somebody who's absent or whatever, who's not giving me credit. How do I still lead in this and not passively sit back or bitch and moan to my colleagues, or worst of all, bitch and moan to my team about it? So I'm hearing you suggesting things that are just really proactive. They are requests or offers that are specific. And I would add to that, maybe like try it out once or twice, and then your time is up. Because if we're choosing to stay, if we're choosing to say, okay, less than ideal working relationship with my manager, I don't want this to impact on my team. Let me try what I can. But if I'm going to constantly go, why on earth my manager keeps on blah, 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 like, accept at some point they may not change.
Right.
I mean, accept from the start they may not change, but at least ask. And then beyond that point, I would exercise enormous caution around that, because I think that backfires. Because in some way, even the gentlest, most loving, careful requests for a manager may end up feeling like criticism. And then you become the person that's like, this one keeps on asking me options, or this one keeps on coming to me with suggestions. Or so to actually work out for yourself, what's the cutoff point between me and my manager when I just need to stop hassling them?
Yeah, I agree with you to a certain extent. I don't know that it's twice. Like, I asked 2 questions.
Yeah, no, sure. No.
But I do agree that there is something about you're not noticing a change. So this must mean that, you need to do something different. I do agree that that does happen.
Yeah.
I haven't had that experience, because I think for the checked out manager, they're usually checked out because they're already moving on, or they don't want to be there themselves. But if you're noticing something about them, they don't want that either.
No,
so
correct.
A checked out manager usually will say, oh crap, like, even though I'm checking out, I can't let this go. Right.
Yeah.
I think you just have to use some intuition and some measure of just like what's right for this situation.
Mm-hmm.
But to not do anything, to be quiet, I think falls into that whole space of like not being in control of what's happening to you and your team. And nobody really wants that either. But I hear what you're saying. I'm not, I just don't, I want to be careful in saying, oh, you tried it twice and then bam.
Yeah. No, it may not be once or twice and any bamming going on, but just an acknowledgement of what you can do. Yeah.
100%.
I also think, in that space, I keep on coming back to the fact that you're still required to lead. So whether you've got an amazing manager or not, and my heart breaks for you, I'm sorry if you're listening right now going, oh God, she's a real nightmare, or he's really hard to get hold of.
Yeah.
And that's still your choice then. Drive your own destiny. What am I going to do? If I'm going to stick it out, how do I change my mindset? How do I look at this leader in a different way and go, what have I yet to discover about them or me or the work that would make some logical sense as to why they undermine me, they do this, and stop worrying too much, therefore, about them and go, how can I respond to this? How can I choose to respond to it?
Yeah.
And if you get to the point where you're like, I don't want to anymore, then that's maybe a time for you to go, okay.
But outside of this question or a question or a one-on-one connection to try to have the conversation with manager, what do you see as options for people?
I think to just really adapt your behavior, again, it's your choice. I'm not a huge fan of this, but adapt your behavior enough to say, what will this allow? What's the gift of this actually? The fact that my manager perhaps is not great at setting out a vision. How can I not annoy the hell out of them by coming up with ideas? How can I create something behind the scenes and nonchalantly pass it in their direction? Oh, my manager's not really good at developing me. Okay, how will that allow me to think a little bit more strategically around what I need best and how to model what good development of my team is? How can I take the initiative and not go, well, nobody sent me on a conference this year and nobody's got me a coach. So do something with it and gently and lovingly and nonchalantly sort of like pass it their way. But when we have that bitterness inside us of it's still not coming, that's when I would say, okay, if you can't change your mindset, then start looking for another job. That's okay.
Yeah.
You don't have to stick out anything.
But you just gave some really good examples there. So mine was one in questioning and in some respects trying to get direction, trying to get feedback. You just gave like, if you think you're working in absence of a vision or a strategy, put something together and say, hey, I worked on this. Can you give me put some eyes on it? That's, again, this is me not sitting and stewing. I'm doing something to get something back. You even said with your development, if you recognize that you have some skills that you are good at and some that you're not, you can, one, tap into, the resources that exist in your organization, tap into the resources that exist outside, and then be proactive. Hey, I'm noticing I have some skill gaps here. I'd like to take these courses here. Tell me what your thoughts are. So still you're doing something in each of those scenarios.
Yes.
And I think in all of those scenarios, it's only when you're not getting something back after doing all of that could get frustrating and you start looking for a job, which I think is a shame.
Yes,
but at the same time, you're giving people some options there.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the manager who's yelling all the time or having tantrums.
Okay.
And we've worked with managers like that.
Yes.
We both have.
Yes.
What would you do in that scenario?
Ooh. I don't know. I can't even answer that. You tell me.
Come on. I'm the person who believes I could, turn Elon Musk around, right? So I'm not really a good person who should answer this, but I do believe, I have found in my career, I've won over tough managers either through my works and contributions, making them look good. Proactively doing the things you talked about. So the things that I need from them, I will just basically do and then put it in front of them. I got to the point with this particular manager, I just gave the feedback. I just was like, I can't take it anymore. And
Yeah.
He said to me, well, it feels like you don't want to work here anymore. Like, I was like, I'm giving feedback about how your yelling makes me feel, but you are taking this to mean that I don't want to work here anymore. And it was a fear tactic. It was a way of making me feel scared. And I'm like, I don't know what you're saying. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying this is what happens when you do this. It makes people feel this way, including myself, and you're not going to get the best results out of people.
Yeah.
And his response was multiple times when we had these conversations, I don't feel like I want to work anymore. And so in turn, I ended up not working there anymore because it just wasn't the right environment. It didn't bring out the best in me. It didn't necessarily make me feel safe.
Right.
Especially as a woman of color, and also as a woman of color, it just didn't make me feel safe at all. And so, but I'm also one of these people, I just couldn't take it because I just saw what it was doing to the team. And if you're in those situations, I'm going to go with the answer of, try to give the feedback.
Yeah.
In this case, I did go to the HR business partner and said, okay, I don't know what to do here. Can you help me give feedback?
Yes.
I got do you want to file an investigation, which is always scary for people. So I was like, no, I just want help in giving the feedback. Turns out this particular situation, there had already been some ER cases, but that were filed. But I just basically tried to get help that way, and it just turned out not to be the best thing for me. So I left.
Yeah. Yes. So when you're, firstly, I'm sorry. It's
life.
I know it is life, and it's also. I think
unfortunate.
It is
unfortunate, but it's life.
That's why we care about leadership, because we know how people are behaving impacts on the team and impacts people, and then they end up leaving.
Yeah.
And that's not really what the kind of leadership
stress,
is. We're trying to rewire here. So I think if you're considering needing to leave as well, there never has to be a good enough reason for you to want to go if it's affecting your well-being and your work and your ability to kind of function. Then start thinking about it, whether you can afford to leave immediately or whether it's like, okay, I'm going to start looking now, and just to look quite sensibly if you are then interviewing and get that far in the hiring process, to be able to ask the kind of questions of your prospective, the hiring manager, that are, still ask those questions, I would say, in a very balanced way rather than reactive. So maybe right now you've got a manager who's driving you crazy because they super micromanage, and that drives you nuts. The kind of questions you might be asking of this new hiring manager might be like, please God, tell me she's not also a micromanager.
Right.
When in actual fact, the kind of things we wanting to be asking are a bit broader, which is like, how do you delegate tasks and work to people? Or tell me about your ideal level of control that you have over decision making.
Love it.
Tell me about a time when you've had to adjust the way in which you have given direction or had accountability over key, problems. How have you changed? So what you're looking for is an awareness that this person has around how they're leading, an ability to flex in response to the work and their people. And maybe just some humility around that of, hey, I'm learning. I used to do it this way, or I'm really crazy. I'm a big visionary, and I know sometimes I drive people crazy because I don't give details.
Right.
Or sometimes I'm super technical, and I know that can frustrate people because I'm missing out on the impact on the, employee engagement.
Right.
You're looking for some indication of their awareness of how they lead and the impact it has.
What do you say to people who get nervous about something like that?
About asking that?
Most people don't ask those questions in interviews. I mean, I do now. I'm sure you do now. But what do you say to people who are like, I can't ask that. I don't want to ask that question. That's going to make me feel uncomfortable. Like, what? They'll feel like I'm judging them. Like, what do you say?
I would say you are judging them, but not in a judgy way. You're interviewing for a job, and you need to make sure
and you just come out of a situation.
Yes. Yeah. So
all the reasons to ask.
Sure, it is a little bit uncomfortable. Neither of us are being glib about that.
No, not at all.
And also, this is your opportunity to learn a little bit about what you're going into. We never really know. Mm-hmm. You can have a great hiring process, and then 3 months later, they're curveballs. You don't know.
Right.
But to the best of your ability, this is you rewiring the leadership going, okay, I don't want this to affect my well-being. Yeah. I want to drive my own destiny. What is important for me? I want a leader who cares about people, who cares about me. How can I find out, gather some evidence around that? Right. And could even frame it with, this is something that's really important to me. I'm really loyal to my leaders. I want to understand a little bit about what matters to you. That shows up nicely in an interview rather than, oh, by the way, have I got something for you? You know, we're not.
It also tells the manager, because you're asking those questions.
Yes.
What you're going to need from them.
Yeah.
So, and that's actually a good thing.
Yeah.
Right? Because then they're now, okay, look, I've got to be on my game with this person. And this person is a rock star. I want to make sure they have all the details and all of the access. So it kind of works out to be completely getting on the same page before you even start working together, Beautiful. Which is amazing for a friend.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we covered all the things we were going to cover in this particular one. This is a short one, guys. Normally we do the hour-longs, and I know we've been getting sort of mixed feedback on the long ones. And, we've never done a short one, but this is a short one. So as always, and by the way, I got some feedback from a listener who's like, aren't you always telling the personal and honest truth? So they're finding our question at the end a little bit confusing. I think the answer to that is, Yes. We're always telling a personal honest truth. So I thought maybe we could switch it up.
Oh, what's me now?
And just say, not ask you, but basically say, so what's your big takeaway and the one thing you're hoping people walk away with from this particular episode? Because we always tell the personal honest truth.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
I would say as a leader, you have choices. So if you have a manager who your relationship with them is frustrating, whatever they are doing or however you connect with them is hard. I'm sorry, number one. Number two, what can you do? You are the leader. How do you drive your destiny? Ask for what you need. And how do you protect your team? That is first and foremost. That's what you're thinking about as a leader and a manager. How can I still give my people what they need? Mm-hmm. So do that. And your other choice is you are still a leader. If that is really onerous and it's making you feel sick, or every day all your husband ever hears you say is bitching about your manager, maybe it's time for you to try something different.
Mm-hmm. The thing that I would say is, and you hear me say it all the time, organizations are going to take care of organizations. And you have to take care of yourself. And as a leader of a team who's responsible for getting the best out of people, if you're not getting the direction that you need, if someone's taking credit for your work, if you're working for a boss that's toxic, you have to choose what your situation and your response is going to be to those things. We've talked about questions. We've talked about doing the work and putting it in front of your boss. We talked about giving feedback. You have to choose the best option, advocate for the situation, and then if it's not working out, make a different choice.
Yeah.
And then don't forget what Dean said, which is if you're in interviews, ask questions of the things that you actually need and want from a boss. So and you're 100% in your right to do that.
Yes.
All right. As always, we want to thank you guys for dialing into the Leadership Rewired podcast. We just love doing this so much. We are in Dean's beautiful home. As always, please subscribe, please like. We are so happy to be doing this work, and we are just so happy to be able to share this with you every single time. Thank you
so much, Allison.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.